Marianne!
Oh!
Come see the smashing juxtaposition of images I've just edited.
Premiering in September 1998, The Wild Thornberrys was the 11th animated series to air on Nickelodeon under the moniker of Nicktoon, and the third that was produced by Klasky Csupo. It follows the titular family of travelling nature documentarians as they venture across the globe in search of rare and unique animals for their TV show, though it mainly focuses on the youngest child of the family, Eliza, who, due to her kindness, has been granted a gift where she can talk to animals. However, she must never tell anyone or else she will lose her powers. From there, hijinks would ensue each week as the Thornberrys would learn about new cultures, survive various natural phenomena, and occasionally face off against poachers, all while trying to still be an average family. The series would go on to have a very impressive run, airing 91 episodes over the span of nearly 6 years, concluding in the summer of 2004. In that time, the series spawned a strong line of merchandise which included several video games, tons of celebrity guests, multiple theme park attractions, and not one but 2 theatrically released movies, the second being a crossover with the channel's longest running show. However, despite its undeniable success, the series has fallen into relative obscurity. It's not nearly as marketed as the other classic Nicktoons, and doesn't come up in discussion all too often. Its only real claim to fame in the past 20 years has been its place within meme culture, though even that has died off significantly, especially when compared to a certain yellow cube. If the series is mentioned, it's often for people to label it as boring by saying it wasn't as entertaining as the rest of the channel's offerings. And I take contention with those views because for its time, this was such a unique, charming show that truly pushed the boundaries of what stories could be told in all ages TV animation. A masterclass in atmosphere carried by some extraordinary vocal talent. It may have taken me the better part of 2 years, but it's finally time to ask, why don't we talk about the Wild Thornberrys? Greetings and salutations everyone, my name's Jake and welcome to my Mind Palace, where I dust off various shows and movies from my past, talk about my connection to them, and determine how well they hold up all these years later. I've always had a soft spot for the Wild Thornberrys. Despite only being brought into existence during the back half of its lifespan, it was reran quite often growing up, so I do have a lot of fond memories of it, and would consider it my 4th favourite Nicktoon behind SpongeBob, Jimmy Neutron, and the Fairly OddParents. One very specific memory I have is collecting the Nicktoons Heat Reveal trading cards that were included inside boxes of this British cereal called Wheatos. And yes, I did rebuy some of the Wild Thornberrys ones for this project, and was shocked to find they still work even after all this time. They certainly don't make them like they used to, because they don't make cereal prizes at all these days since things aren't allowed to be whimsical anymore. Sometime in the 2010s, I decided to re-watch the entire series and fell in love with it all over again, and since then it has joined the ranks of What's New Scooby-Doo and Recess as relics from my childhood that I revisit whenever life gets to be a little too much. You can imagine I've seen the whole thing a fair few times at this point, which is one of the reasons it's been at the top of my list of videos I want to make for a while now. So how exactly did the series come to be, and what were the intentions of the people behind it? Back in the 90s, of the 3 major kid-focused cable networks, Nickelodeon was a force to be reckoned with, having a significant foothold in the pop culture of the decade. While the channel boasted energetic game shows, charming sketch comedies, and witty live-action sitcoms, the true secret to their success was their collection of original creator-driven animated series called Nicktoons.
You won't find them in Never Never Land. They're not squishy and sweet, and they don't make you go googaloo.
Whereas Disney's animated television efforts focused on creating groups of shows with a similar look and feel, Nickelodeon's primary mission statement was finding projects with vastly different styles, from the surreal and wacky to the mundane and relatable. The goal of the studio was to ensure that no matter who you were, there would be a Nicktoon you'd be able to connect with. But the undisputed king of the network was Rugrats. The series about talking babies and the comical way they misunderstand the world around them was a big hit with audiences, launching the still relatively new studio Klasky Csupo into a household name, forever scarring millions of kids with an early introduction to jump scares.
You can run, but I'll still be in your nightmares!
However, after 3 seasons and 65 episodes, production of Rugrats came to a close in 1993, which was simply the lay of the land back then, as it meant the series now had enough episodes to be sold to other channels and run in syndication where it could continue to generate revenue. With their biggest success now seemingly behind them, Klasky Csupo moved on to other projects, including creating a second Nicktoon, and capitalising on a building revolution in the industry, cartoons for adults. Something they helped kickstart by working on early episodes of The Simpsons. The studio would produce the cult classic USA Network series Duckman, created by Everett Peck.
USA? Are they on at night?
Are you kidding? Dozens of people watch USA.
Once the scripts for season 1 of Duckman had been written and the network was deciding if they wanted to renew it, writers Jeffrey Astrof and Mike Sikowitz were asked to write up some treatments for other potential show ideas so they wouldn't have to look for work elsewhere.
They gave us, they had a couple of cells that they had drawn, basically, and one was from a nursing home that we called Geezers. It was just like an animated show about nursing homes, and the other one wound up being the Wild Thornberrys, and we just created a show called Nigel Thornberry's Animal Kingdom or something like that. And by creating it, we just came up with some characters and basically what the show would be about. But they really just tossed it to us just to keep us interested. I don't even know how much they gave us, how much money they gave us. They probably gave us like a couple of grand to last us, 3 months.
By the mid-90s, thanks to the aforementioned syndicated reruns, Rugrats received a massive boost in popularity, which prompted Nickelodeon to commission a 4th season that would begin airing in 1996. This revival would catapult the Talking Babies into international stars, generating over $1.4 billion in merchandise over the following years. Coincidentally, the same time Rugrats started up again pretty much coincided with Our Real Monsters reaching the end of its shelf life. And Duckman was also not long for this world and would be cancelled soon after due to budgetary issues at USA. As big as Rugrats was, they knew the studio couldn't rely on one show. Thus, in their search for another hit, studio founders Arlene Klasky and Gabor Csupo returned to that idea of an animated nature documentary show. And with writers Steve Peppoon, David Silverman, and Steven Sustarik began to rework it. While Astrof and Sikowitz received an offer to come back and write the pilot, they declined, instead opting to receive residuals as series developers. Don't worry about them though, they were doing fairly well for themselves. The new show would end up being taken to Fox, and was set to be an adult comedy about Nigel, who would be the one able to communicate with animals, as the series would be loosely inspired by Creature Comforts, the 1989 Academy Award-winning short film created by Nick Park, whom I met at the beginning of last year. And if you want to hear the whole story about that, check out my Wallace and Gromit video. Later, we're doing this now. Needless to say, Fox did not go for the script they developed, but knowing how much potential this idea had with a little more tweaking, Klasky Csupo was sure to retain the rights, and a year later, finally sold the concept to Nickelodeon, as their third collaboration and the network's first ever regular 20-minute cartoon. And once writer Mark Palmer was brought on board, the series we know began to fully take shape, with the focus shifting to Nigel's youngest daughter and a push towards more educational elements. As the series would feature world travel, an aim of production was that the series could potentially be used in schools, and as such would teach important knowledge about not only natural ecosystems and biology, but also various human cultures that exist around the globe. For these elements, a research specialist was brought onto the crew to guide the writers so these topics would be treated with the responsibility and care they necessitate. A move coordinated by producer Eric Casemiro, who also had a significant hand in crafting the series.
I decided that I wanted this adventure show to be scientifically based, something that you could use in a science curriculum. We hired a specialist who did massive amounts of research on different regions of the world, different cultures, and different species of animals. This information will be given to writers to help them brainstorm for a season of shows.
After 5 years, 3 very different pictures, and 9 series developers, the Wild Thornberrys would finally premiere on Nickelodeon in the fall of 1998 to over 2 million viewers.
Eliza Thornberry. She's your average kid
She's talking to the monkey again.
with your average family
Eliza, you know our rule about llamas in the combi.
and your average best friend.
A handsome, capable primate.
And average hobbies like dodging piranha, running from lions, and saving the rainforest from total destruction. You know, average, everyday kid stuff.
Right.
The Wild Thornberrys. Check them out tonight at 8, 7 Central in the Nickelodeon Zone. Anything but average.
The pilot episode of the series, written by Mark Palmer and directed by Jeff McGrath and Cathy-Mulcahy, was supposedly released on VHS at some point, although I couldn't find any evidence of this. I did, however, learn that many of the show's early home media releases were distributed by National Geographic, so that's fun. The pilot is said to have aired the same day as the first full episode premiere and was shown multiple times during the early weeks of the show's run, but has allegedly not been seen since 1998. It's not available on any of the DVD releases, nor can it be found on Paramount+. However, in May of 2013, a user by the name of Jeffadude87 uploaded a camera recording of the pilot to YouTube, which was quickly archived. So we do have access to the full pilot, just in less than ideal quality. The episode is about Nigel and Marianne being told by the Foundation that they need to capture footage of a black rhino for their show, or else they'll lose funding. They leave to try and find one, but are unsuccessful, so Eliza goes on a search of her own to slightly better results. It makes no sense why Nickelodeon has kept this locked up, because it's not a work in progress that needed some tweaks before it could move into a full series like other Nicktoon pilots that are readily available. It's pretty much an episode of the Wild Thornberrys where everyone is ever so slightly off model, but from the writing to the dynamics between the characters, it's all there.
Can you hear a rhino?
No. Look. Fire ants. Amazing little creatures. Industrious. Dynamic.
Don't they sting?
No, actually, they bite.
It even features Kip O'Donnell and Neil Biederman, who are recurring villains in the series. They only show up at the beginning and the end and are more of a minor inconvenience than anything, but they're here. The only major difference is the pilot is 11 minutes, so it moves fast and has a very straightforward story. But its purpose is to get us acquainted with this family dynamic, and for that, it does an excellent job. Though it does cause me to ponder if originally the series was going to be 11 minutes like every previous Nicktoon, but as they expanded upon the concept to focus on education and world building, they realised a longer runtime was a necessity. I am curious how this change came about and whether or not it received any pushback from Nickelodeon, because without it, I don't think the series would have worked anywhere near as well. Something very apparent from the first official episode, titled Iron Curtain. Once again written by Mark Palmer and directed by Cathy-Mulcahy, the story sees the Thornberrys in pursuit of close-up footage with some elephants, leading them to a nature preserve in Tanzania. Though upon seeing the guard towers and learning of the electrified fence, Eliza immediately concludes that this place is actually a prison, a stance that is supported when she and Darwin meet a young elephant who was separated from their mother when they were brought in. So that night she decides to help them break out, only for them and Marianne to quickly encounter some poachers.
Don't come near me! I'm filming you for a big television show! Come any closer and the world will know what terrible, awful people you are! Which doesn't seem to bother you.
Causing them to make a beeline back to the preserve, with Eliza using the searchlight to ensure the poachers are caught. As a token of their appreciation, the elephants allow themselves to be filmed for the nature show. Immediately we can see the benefits of the episodes having a longer runtime, as the slower pace allows room for plenty of quiet and atmospheric moments, something helped tremendously by the stunning art direction. Early on, the series has such an immaculate vibe in both the look of the environments and how creative it is with its staging, giving it this truly unique visual language. The drawings also tended to be looser and more expressive than they would be in later episodes. There really is something about cell animation that makes everything so magical. You could almost feel the texture of the sand or smell the rainforest because everything just came alive. And that is something the series does lose when it transitions to being coloured digitally after episode 40. It's not only that everything looks far more clean and less natural, we stop getting those interesting perspective shots. While the writing stays the same quality, and even improved in certain aspects, the series had far less personality in the visuals. The extra length also results in the whole family having something to do, giving us more of a chance to show off their personalities and see how they play off each other. Debbie receives her own dedicated B-plot, first going to great lengths to chase down the latest issue of her favourite magazine, Teenage Wasteland, then having to rescue Donnie when the Preserve believes he's the missing link and try to capture him.
Come on, Tarzan. We gotta get you out of here before you become someone's senior thesis.
Meanwhile, Nigel catches up with his old roommate from Oxford University, Jomo, who was in charge of the Preserve. The episode does such a good job of giving each family member the exact right amount of screen time, while also finding ways to have all their stories overlap at various points. Plus, because things no longer have to move a mile a minute, the dialogue feels far more natural, which really elevates the sharpness of the writing.
Oh, I don't have a single close-up, Nigel. No, I take that back. I have one beautiful shot of that dentist from Nebraska.
All of that time stuck in development, where it was being constantly retooled, really was to its benefit, as already we can see how many of the core elements of the series feel refined, showing how they really did strike gold with this concept and these characters. Now, typically when I do a retrospective on a multi-season TV show, I like to split each season into its own individual section, where I can talk about how the style of the series evolves over time, whether characters gain or lose prominence, and if there's an overarching theme to that group of episodes. And that's not to say the Wild Thornberrys doesn't have that stuff, because there are things like story arcs and continuity between episodes that I will get into. But there isn't really a lot to say about each season on its own as a result of how TV cartoons were produced back then. Because again, the point of these shows was to create enough episodes to run in syndication. So it wasn't like how we know it today, where a show gets picked up for 20 episodes, they make those, and then they have to wait and see if they get picked up for more. At which point some crew members will leave to find other work, and new ones will take their place. These shows were constantly in production because the networks would give them at least 52 episodes from the jump, though that number could also be around 65 or 70. So you look at many cartoons from this time and you'll see the episode production codes aren't split up by seasons like we've come to expect. Instead, it's one number that keeps going up because that's how they were made, before the network randomly split them up into batches which they labelled as a season. Kinda like what streaming services do now, only with far more job security, since any artist brought onto one of these shows would likely be working on it for the next 3 to 5 years. This is a roundabout way of me saying it doesn't make sense to try writing an analysis for every season because there aren't many notable changes. And also because Nickelodeon horrendously screwed up the airing order in ways you will not believe. Instead, I'm going to group seasons 1 through 4 together, which I am calling the original run, for reasons that will make sense much later. Then we're going to talk about the movie, season 5, and finally, Rugrats Go Wild, which I consider to be the end of the franchise.
It's about how Mom and Dad drag us through the wild so they can film their nature show.
Come on, we explore, we see tons of animals, and have awesome adventures.
As mentioned, a majority of the show revolves around the exploits of the family's youngest daughter, Eliza, an endlessly curious 12-year-old with a deep love of nature who lacks any self-preservation instincts whatsoever.
Piranha!
While she does need a massive "do not try this at home" label placed on her at all times, I find Eliza to be an incredibly unique protagonist and a great example of a realistically written child character, though a lot of her likability does come down to Lacey Chabert's fantastic voice work. Chabert brings this infectious energy to the role, perfectly capturing Eliza's determination as well as her misplaced confidence.
I am not going to be deprived of a panda encounter just because my parents think I'm 12 years old.
You are 12 years old.
What's your point?
I am fully serious when I say this is one of the best vocal performances in the history of Nickelodeon, right up there with Helga. A perfect character-defining moment for Eliza is in the episode Matadi or Bust, written by Carolyn O'Mine and directed by Sylvia Quellin. In the episode, the Thornberrys have to take a ferry so they can catch the only freighter leaving Congo for the next 8 weeks. But those plans are put in jeopardy when Eliza, Darwin and Donnie fall overboard while rescuing a hippo that had been captured by Kip and Biederman. Their only chance at getting back to the boat is by scaling a nearby mountain and meeting it on the other side. It's a brilliant demonstration of Eliza's strengths and weaknesses, as she doesn't hesitate to climb the mountain while completely unaware there is a public footpath underneath them, despite Darwin's efforts to inform her.
Eliza, excuse me.
Just keep moving, Darwin!
For a while now, there has been this prevailing idea that Eliza is a deeply selfish character, that she's always acting within her own interests and doesn't take anyone else's feelings into account. And at that point, I have to question if we are even watching the same show, because Eliza's kindness and desire to help others are the driving forces of most episodes. I mean, that is why she was given her powers in the first place. There are instances where she does act selfishly, but that's only because she's a child.
Hello, I'm Eliza Thornberry, remember? Hey, if I got along with rhinos, jaguars, and gorillas, how hard could this be?
She is so desperate for others to pay attention to her and see her as special that when she receives that, she can quickly get carried away, like when a group of animals in the desert convince her that she can call upon the Rainmaker. But these stories make it clear that Eliza is in the wrong, and once she recognizes her mistake, she is willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. Though if you want an episode that truly shows her generosity and willingness to make sacrifices for those in need, look no further than the holiday special Have Yourself a Thornberry Little Christmas, written by Kate Boutillier, David Regal and Adam Beacon. The family is spending the festive season in Nambia, but still make an effort to celebrate as best they can.
Hey, I think I found this year's Thornberry Christmas tree!
It'll be easier to decorate than last year's cactus.
Though in the lead up to the big day, Eliza ends up giving everything away to animals who need help. She lends her and Debbie's gift for their parents to an ostrich who was struggling to keep her eggs warm. She gives their lights to a zebra who was separated from his herd to ward off a group of jackals, and then gives all their food to a lion who was attacking Darwin. She understands the consequences of her actions, but still doesn't hesitate to do what she feels is the right thing, no matter the cost. And it all works out in the end, as the animals repay Eliza's kindness by giving her family a Christmas celebration they'll never forget.
Nothing like a Thornberry Christmas, is there?
All of us together.
Surrounded by animals, naturally.
But while all these are great showings for Eliza, my favourite stories are the ones that dial back her confidence and dig a little deeper into her insecurities. Stuff like showing that she does on some level also long for human connection as much as Debbie, or exploring her feeling like an outcast in episodes like The Great Bangaboo. Written by David Regal and directed by Kathy Mulcahy, this episode is about Eliza's feelings of isolation over being the only person in the world who can talk to animals.
Debbie said I'm an oddball, and she's right.
Oh, you are not.
I talk to animals.
Well, yes, there's that.
It's not normal, Darwin. It makes me different from my sister, from those kids.
Her fortune seems to change when she believes she has found another human with her power, enlisting the help of some street animals to sneak into his sold-out show so she can meet him. Only to learn he is obviously a fraud. Yet upon confronting him over his deception, the showman does end up helping her.
We're all oddballs, every one of us. Trust me, I've traveled the world and I know.
Eliza may not have found a kindred spirit who could understand her like she hoped, but she did learn to embrace what makes her different instead of being ashamed of it, because everyone has something like that. Hers just happens to be a tad more magical.
Girl, you come around here again sometime. I think you fit in just fine.
While Eliza is incredibly bright, she does often go running straight towards danger because she lacks common sense. So it's a good thing her best friend Darwin has enough for the both of them, even if his concerns always fall on deaf ears.
What's in here?
I don't know. Poisonous plants, razor-sharp blades, but do keep poking around.
Voiced wonderfully by Tom Kane, Darwin is a chimpanzee who met the Thornberrys 2 years ago when they travelled to Nigeria, where Eliza was granted her powers, and he decided to move in with them to escape life in the jungle. Since then, he has become accustomed to all the creature comforts, developing a spoiled and snobbish attitude as a result, with him often turning his nose up at other animals.
That's the thing with predators. Oh, sure, they can hunt, but if you ask me, they're dumb. Dumb, 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 dumb. In a really intelligent way.
In every other situation, he is incredibly cautious and timid, but the second Eliza is in any sort of danger, he no longer registers fear. And it's always so sweet to see moments of him being protective of her, like when Eliza gets attacked by a tiger she'd previously befriended.
She bit me!
She what? Oh, I'll get that tiger! What am I saying? She's a tiger!
On the surface, it's fairly easy to label Darwin as a pessimist. The clouds to Eliza's sunshine who always jumps to the worst possible scenario.
Are you thinking what I'm thinking?
Yes, after they kill me, will they make me into a hand puppet?
But I don't find that an apt description because his constant negativity seems to stem from the fact he is riddled with self-doubt, as time and time again we witness him surprise himself with just how capable he actually is. Since he's a very Eliza-centric character, her being the only other main character he can communicate with and all, their relationship receives a lot of focus in the series, and is a great example of how this show builds compelling character dynamics. Darwin doesn't understand Eliza's fascination with nature because he's had to live in it, and now just wants to remain in the relative safety of the convey. So their friendship is this fascinating back and forth between a human who wants to exist in the unpredictable wild and an animal who wants to exist in domestic bliss, leading to a lot of tension between them. Dinner with Darwin, written by Steve Scroven and directed by Sylvia Quellen, illustrates exactly why Eliza and Darwin need each other. A heated argument between them ends with Darwin storming off into the jungle to prove he still has his animal instincts, with their time apart forcing Eliza to reconcile with how she has taken him for granted, especially after spending some time with Donnie and experiencing what it's like to be with someone who never listens to you.
I'm sorry I hurt your feelings!
Whoa! And I'm sorry I didn't grab that branch!
Though there is an issue with this episode in that it actively calls out the fact there is a significant power imbalance in Eliza and Darwin's friendship, but doesn't actually do anything to resolve the issue, as by the end the status quo has been restored. In fact, a much later episode called Hot Air features a very similar conflict where it once more calls out Eliza for disregarding Darwin's feelings.
You always complain, but then you end up having a good time.
I always complain? You mean like when we're hanging from rope bridges and stuck in caves?
And also has her recognise that by being paired with someone who gives her a taste of her own medicine, this time in the form of an energetic possum named Penelope, which leads to another heartfelt apology followed immediately by nothing changing whatsoever.
Oh, I suppose you'd like to do that again?
Though I want to reiterate that for every moment like these, there are at least 3 more that demonstrate how deeply the two do care for and love each other. While it is Darwin's role in the show to be the one who pulls Eliza out of danger, there are also plenty of instances in which she has to save him. It also helps that their disagreements are often very funny.
Think about it, Dar. There's no scientific proof that sea monsters exist.
There's no scientific proof that people can talk to animals, but there you are!
While Eliza and Darwin are often leading the A-plot of an episode, chances are the B-plot will revolve around the Thornberrys' eldest.
Help has arrived.
On the outlook, Debbie, played by Daniel Harris, is exactly what you'd expect of a teen character from the late 90s. A sardonic and vain person who acts apathetic towards everything. Which, yeah, she is. But as the show continues, she really does subvert your expectations.
If I had known we were gonna get stuck in the Twilight Zone, I would have brought water or something.
The main thing I love about Debbie, and the thing that makes her my favourite character, beyond the significant development she receives in the latter half of the series, is her passion. If there is something that Debbie wants, then she will stop at nothing until she achieves it. A part of her personality we've already seen in the first episode, where she was determined to track down the latest issue of Teenage Wasteland. Eliza and Debbie are the family members with the most conflict due to their polar opposite personalities, turning every minor disagreement into an intense competition, whether it's searching for a Mother's Day gift or trying to scare each other while exploring a spooky house. So a lot of the more memorable episodes really fixate on how the sisters view each other and occasionally have them come to a new understanding. One in particular that sticks with me occurs very early into the series, that being Only Child, or as I like to call it, Debbie's Gay Awakening. Written by Kate Boutilier, we find the Thornberrys camping by the Amazon River, where Eliza searches for the elusive freshwater dolphin, until she meets a local fisherman who tells her a legend about a dolphin who turns into a teenager the day before a full moon. Coincidentally, this occurs at the very same time a mysterious stranger appears by the convey.
Hi, I'm Zhao. Hey, cool shoes.
While Zhao and Debbie immediately hit it off, Eliza tries and fails to prove that Zhao is a dolphin, bordering on obsession. This tension builds until it erupts into a huge fight where the sisters pretty much disown each other. Out of options, Eliza returns to the fisherman who tells her about the final part of the legend, which is that the dolphin befriends a human and then transforms them into a dolphin to cure its loneliness. A storm begins as Eliza rushes back to camp but fears that she's already too late, as she begs Zhao not to take Debbie.
If you can hear me, please don't take Debbie. I'm glad I have a sister. I miss her. I swear, please, Zhao.
The storm causes a flash flood as the family searches for Debbie, only to find her being saved by a dolphin as Eliza pulls her back in.
Hey, look! There's another one.
Oh, good. She's got a friend.
Maybe. Or a sister.
And I wasn't kidding about Debbie being queer, because there is some kind of coding going on with her. One detail I noticed is that whenever Debbie meets a girl, she always brushes her hair behind her ear so it's no longer covering her face.
If you like music, there's a great place on the base. Want to see it?
I would love to, but we're supposed to wait for our escort. Boring Mr. Science Guy.
I'm boring Mr. Science Guy.
You? No way. I mean, I'm sorry.
However, this rarely happens with any of her male love interests, as if she's hiding part of herself in these interactions. Something to ponder. While Eliza and Debbie's storylines make up a bulk of the series, the character who facilitates a majority of her emotional growth is Donnie.
Touch it, and they won't even find your shadow.
Voiced by Red Hot Chili Peppers drummer Flea, Donnie is a feral child the Thornberrys recently came across while in Borneo and have been fostering ever since. Initially, the show did play around with having him sometimes speak in English, mainly repeating things others say to him.
Oh, be quiet.
Oh, be quiet. Oh, be quiet. Oh, be quiet.
Though this is quickly dropped in favour of his iconic gibberish. Donnie's role in the show is to cause chaos and act as a comedic foil to both Darwin and Debbie. But with Eliza always venturing off into the wilderness and their parents filming their documentaries, Debbie essentially assumes the role of his primary caretaker, with it being stated early on that it is her responsibility to give him English lessons. While she is often frustrated with his antics, threatening to ship him back to Borneo multiple times, over the first few episodes, they develop this incredibly strong bond, which brings out Debbie's softer side, leading to some of the more quietly tender moments in the show.
Come on, Weed. I'd be crushed if we left you behind.
don't go. The Thornberrys will return.
No honeycomb? Tastes like toasted honey. We want honeycomb. We know how.
Cash or charge?
Charge it, ma'am!
Honeycomb cereal is part of this complete breakfast. Hey, Mr. Turtle! Look!
Now you can smell your way through a Wild Thornberrys adventure with scratch and sniff puzzles from Post.
Chocolate chip cookies.
One free Wild Thornberrys puzzle with 3 scratch and sniffs in each marked box of honeycomb and golden crisp cereals.
Thornberrys are back. Tell your dog.
I am far from the first person to point out that Debbie does lead a somewhat tragic life, spending the most important years of her development isolated from her peers and missing out on many regular teenage experiences, which has left her starved for social interaction.
We can talk to other people. Oh, going somewhere with other people? On a bus with my parents. And other people. Okay, let's do it. When do we leave?
Many have called into question Nigel and Marianne's parenting, especially with how Debbie is not afraid to voice her disapproval of the constant travelling and the effect it's having on her, which we will dig into shortly. But one of the ways the series balances this out and somewhat mitigates that aspect is how she is often allowed to win. In the episode Bad Company, written by Leslie Ryder and directed by Steve Ressel, Debbie decides to make her own shampoo by foraging for the ingredients after Darwin uses the last of hers, though this is also a way of proving to her parents that she is capable. And while she is put through absolute hell while gathering all the plants required, she does come out victorious. Though sometimes glory is in the eye of the beholder, like in the episode Stick Your Neck Out, written by Adam B. Ken and directed by Kathy Melkasian. In her storyline, Debbie enters a songwriting contest hosted by her favourite rock star, Desperodine, with her entry being a soulful ballad about her life.
You know my dreams, you hear my screams, even when my soul's like in And while no one ends up winning the contest in the end, Debbie has the true honour of having her song stolen by Des, something she couldn't be more thrilled about.
You're not mad?
Mad? He chose my song! He's singing my words! This is just more proof that Des and I are soulmates!
But here's the thing people are missing when they write their think pieces about how Nigel and Marianne are bad parents. Debbie doesn't actually want to leave, and all the proof I need to back up that statement can be found in the episode Pack of Thornberrys, written by Kate Boutillier and directed by Mark Riceley. After yet another fight with Eliza, Debbie applies to a prestigious all-girls boarding school, which her parents fully support her in.
Debbie really wants this. We can't hold her back.
Even when they make it to the institution and discover it's an incredibly repressive environment that forces young women into a strict box, this doesn't discourage her in the slightest. Despite everyone's doubts that she'll be accepted, Debbie aces her interview because she is far smarter than people give her credit for.
This isn't real ivory, is it? Because that's like so uncool, not to mention illegal since the ivory trade ban in 1990. Does anyone have any gum?
Debbie is accepted into the school, but after thinking about it, decides to reject the offer.
Yeah, well, you're my family, like it or not.
So, afraid you'd miss me,
Oh yeah, that's it.
This episode single-handedly debunks many of the problems people have with this show, yet is never brought up in those discussions. All of Debbie's complaining about her life is just talk, as it is for many teenagers. If she truly wanted to leave, Marianne and Nigel would let her, but she'd rather be travelling the world with her family than live a stationary life apart from them. And that constant exposure to different cultures, despite what some may say, is aiding her development, as we can see how those experiences, along with Nigel and Marianne's parenting, has shaped her values.
I mean, nature showed us how this is supposed to be, right?
Huh?
Check it out. The males of any species are physically equipped to be hunters, so human males should bring home the bacon, and mothers carry the babies, so they're the right ones to stay home and take care of them.
Are you totally gonzo? First of all, a family can be anything. 2 parents, 1 parent, 1 kid, a couple of kids, 2 sisters, a jungle boy, and a monkey. Don't you guys know that, like, mother lions go out and do all the hunting? And there are lots of father birds who stay home with their chicks. When it comes to family, nature's like, whatever. Nature rocks.
Even with the show shifting its focus towards a child protagonist like other Nicktoons, the creators desired that the series still also be about the parents. This was a strong deviation from the rest of Nickelodeon's lineup, which mainly feature kids with their parents or other adults acting as side characters. That was an attitude that Klasky Csupo was always trying to oppose with Rugrats, where care was taken to ensure characters like Stu and Dee Dee were fleshed out and likeable, though it was clear the babies were still the focal point. And now with this new series, they were going to take that further by creating stories that showcased parent-child relationships in a way few other shows had done before.
Suppose you tell me what the modern teenager likes to do nowadays.
Not hang out with their parents?
Splendid! Mine are currently on another continent.
What needs to be said about Sir Nigel Archibald Thornberry? Even people who've never seen the show know about Nigel. An irrepressibly optimistic man with a near-permanent vacant stare, Nigel was born with a silver spoon in his mouth but used his wealth to spend his Oxford University years travelling the globe, where he and his friends became committed to wildlife conservation. In the present day, Nigel is the charismatic host of the family's nature documentaries with an overconfidence in his abilities that is quite typical of privileged British men.
And we won't climb, you silly biscuit. We'll rappel.
Nigel, when was the last time you rappelled?
As a boy, but fear not, one never forgets. It's like riding a bicycle.
Though, don't get me wrong, he is an expertly skilled naturalist. Due to his larger-than-life personality and glass-half-full attitude, Nigel is often used as the show's primary source of comedic relief.
You never know. Rats can compress their rib cages and slip under doors. I've never heard of a hippo doing that, but then again, you don't find many doors in lowland forests and river courses.
But the series does an excellent job at balancing his humour with these more humanising moments, such as his deep love of cowboys and Western culture.
Nigel.
Yes, old chap?
Are you ready to ride?
Was Annie ready to get her gun? Hang on, Donnie, old buckaroo!
Besides Donnie, and to a degree Darwin, Nigel is the most overtly cartoonish of the Thornberrys, yet Tim Curry's outstanding performance gives him such unmistakable humanity and range. You get so used to him being this incredibly chipper and upbeat character that moments when he suddenly takes things seriously are very sobering and make you pay attention.
Oh, Nigel.
This is terrible. This is a national forest.
Curry's involvement in the show is credited to his long-standing friendship with the series' voice director, Charlie Adler, whom he first met when they worked on the 1989 Paddington series from Hanna-Barbera. Many other performers would have taken one look at Nigel and played him as a one-note dumb dad, but Curry took this role seriously and gave the character such incredible nuance. In his memoir, Vagabond, here is what Tim Curry had to say about Nigel.
Of all the voice roles I've taken on, this is one of the ones that has meant the most to me. I love that Nigel is so oddly naive, and he takes his fatherhood so seriously and amusingly and rather sweetly. He adores his children and truly wants to be the best he can for them, sort of like a Steve Irwin figure.
I won't let you down.
Eliza, I never worry about that.
Nigel Knows Best, written by Kate Boutillier and directed by Sylvia Quellin, is widely considered to be one of the greatest episodes, and for good reason. While in Peru, Eliza persuades her father to let them take a llama named Santusa to scale the Andes Mountains. However, she quickly grows annoyed at his many safety precautions and refusal to take even one step off the trail.
Look, it's Machu Picchu. Can we go?
I am sorry, dear, but according to my map, there's no real trail between here and there. And while I love a good scramble as much as the next man, I think it's best we stay on the main road.
This leads to her sneaking off and climbing the mountain by herself, only to immediately succumb to altitude sickness. Exactly what Nigel warned her about, and passes out in the middle of a blizzard. She later awakens in an ice cave with Nigel and some Quechua people whom she believes to be her rescuers, though Santusa later reveals to her that it was Nigel who found her and dug the shelter, giving Eliza a new appreciation for her father.
Dad, I'm sorry I wandered off.
Well, I probably would have done the same thing when I was your age.
While this episode is a fantastic showing for Nigel, it also does a great job of highlighting both the similarities and differences between him and his daughter. Nigel was very much like Eliza growing up, but now has years of experience that help him understand not to take unnecessary risks, which Eliza doesn't have yet. However, that isn't even my favourite Nigel episode. That honour goes to Born to be Wild, written by Catherine Wyand, Ellen Hampton and David Fiore. The family has travelled to the jungles of Sumatra in Indonesia so Nigel can pursue his white whale, or Sumatran rhino.
I tried once, back when I was in my prime.
You'll find it, Dad. I know you will.
But I couldn't, you know, even when I was at my best. It's always been my dream, Eliza. I'm just worried it might be too late for your old dad.
It's quite startling seeing Nigel become so vulnerable, as he's filled with doubt, questioning if his best years are behind him. Meanwhile, by talking to the other animals, Eliza is able to quickly find the rhino for Nigel. However, she soon realises that putting the rhino on their TV show would only further endanger it.
My dad wants to see you so much, but I can't do it. You have to go.
Thus, her and Darwin spend the rest of the episode trying to help their new friend evade Nigel and his expert tracking. But in trying to run away, they somehow end up back at the convy where he is discovered.
Dad, listen, this rhino...
Must be our little secret.
Secret?
Oh, heavens, yes. I'm sorry, Eliza. I suppose you're keen to have him on the television show, but it wouldn't really do at all. Now, what we must do is get him back to where he's safe and happy.
But what about your dream?
I got to see my rhino. And I got to track him, too. Well, that's rather plenty, don't you think?
Dad, sometimes you are really cool.
No, sweet. I wouldn't go that far.
While Nigel remains the face of the operation, Marianne is the one holding everything together, keeping it running smoothly as the sole camera operator, editor, and mechanic.
A woman should always carry pantyhose. They're just the thing when the fan bell breaks.
Played by accomplished voice actor and stage actress Jodie Carlisle, Marianne is certainly the more strict and cautious of the parents, but the perfect match of the witty dialogue and Carlisle's straightforward and dry delivery turn her into one of the funniest characters on the show.
Kenya has a law against sending live children through the mail.
But you would never let them throw your oldest daughter in an African prison.
You want to try me?
Though much like Nigel has his moments of clarity where he takes things seriously, Marianne has moments where her sensibility slips and she becomes truly unhinged, such as the subplot from Nigel Knows Best, which is the first time we learn about Marianne's complicated relationship with her mother Sophie, who strongly disapproves of how Marianne is raising her kids, which she does by sending them constant care packages filled with soap and passive-aggressive letters.
And a book. It's called Women Who Juggle Too Much. Whoa, Mom, were you in the circus?
It's a book about how good mothers don't work, or drive, or breathe.
All this really gets to her, and when a bus in front of them drops a suitcase that is also coincidentally filled with soap, she snaps.
They threw a suitcase of soap at me. They don't think I can keep my family clean? Oh, well, I'll show them.
Blinded by rage, she chases down the bus and overtakes them, causing one of their tires to flatten.
Put that in your soap dish!
As she spends the rest of the day trying to prove that she's a good mother to a point where it starts getting creepy.
I thought you couldn't boil eggs at this altitude.
A good mother can always boil eggs.
All this builds to one of the greatest reveals and perhaps my favourite line from the entire show.
Nuns? Nuns think I'm a bad mother?
But it does lead to a sweet resolution where she and Debbie have a genuine heart-to-heart.
I just worry with the traveling and the work and the...
Mom, you are a good mom.
Really?
Yeah. Besides, I've got to chill you out or you're going to drive us off a cliff.
I feel like Marianne is the character who benefits greatly from the later episodes, where the show digs deeper into who she is outside of her role in the family, such as her talent for horseback riding having been a junior rodeo champion, or seeing her cut loose at karaoke.
Mom was named Queen of Karaoke last night in town.
Well, I'm not surprised. Your mum's singing has always been karaoke with me.
One of my favourite Marianne storylines is found in the episode Where the Gauchos Roam, written by Adam Beacon and directed by Mark Risley, in which the Thornberrys are invited to take part in a cattle drive by the family of Marianne's childhood best friend, Gabriella, as they spend the entire episode reminiscing.
Her Elvis impersonation was priceless.
Wait, this is my mother you're talking about?
Thank you very much.
Okay, maybe I could learn a trick or two on that dumb horse.
At the start of the show's run, there is definitely an imbalance as to which parent would spend time with each kid. It was always Eliza and Nigel teaming up, or Debbie and Marianne getting paired for a storyline, as those seemed like the only relationships the writers were interested in exploring at the time, with a few exceptions. This changes in episode 34, Rebel Without a Trunk, written by Kate Boutillier and directed by Sylvia Quellen. While in India, Marianne and Eliza help out a family friend by transporting a pair of mother and daughter elephants to a festival. Marianne hopes this will make for a nice bonding experience for them, but they continue to remain emotionally distant, with Eliza's elephant Rosie pressuring her to sneak off, which leads to her getting into trouble and eventually causing their campsite to catch on fire, so the two have to work together to put it out. Once everyone is safe and Eliza apologises for how she's been acting, the pair are able to salvage what's left of the trip by finally having some quality time together. And from here, you have more frequent exploration of different relationships in the family. One in particular I love is the subplot from the episode April Fool's Day, written by Joan Considine Johnson and directed by Carol Millican, which focuses on Debbie and Nigel. Debbie needs to complete an assignment for physical education, which Nigel tries to help her with, refusing to let her give up. With some encouragement from Donnie, Debbie performs brilliantly in every event until the last one, where she finally reveals why she's been putting this off.
Hurdles? No way, I trip every time, which always makes all the other kids laugh.
Poppet, I'll cue you at each precise moment you're to jump a hurdle, and I promise you, no one is going to laugh.
That covers Nigel and Marianne's relationships with their daughters, but what about each other? I was so ready to come into this and talk about how wonderful they are together, and of course make this joke, but their interactions were the only thing I wasn't the biggest fan of at the start. While I adore them both as characters, the way their marriage was often presented in the early episodes was quite off-putting.
The answer is...
Dear, remember, you're to discuss the answer with me first.
But I know the answer.
You may think you know the answer, but if we both think we know the answer and it's the same answer, we probably have the right answer.
So much of their dynamic was just Marianne being constantly irritated by everything Nigel does, which is understandable. Nigel has a strong tendency to act without thinking, even in precarious situations, and in those cases, Marianne's outbursts are always justified. If it were only that, it'd be fine, but this negative energy feels ever present in a lot of their screen time together. Even when Nigel is trying to pay her a compliment because he worships the ground his wife walks on, her immediate response is annoyance.
Marianne, you look smashing in that gown. Where on earth did you get it?
The closet.
The one moment between them that really irritated me was in the episode Eliza-Cology, where Marianne completely disregards Nigel's concerns about disturbing the sea turtles while they are laying their eggs, especially since a previous episode stated that she studied zoology in college.
I can't shoot the turtles this far away. We have to get in close.
I'm sorry, dear, but we must take pains to avoid disturbing the turtles while they lay their tiny eggies. I'm afraid I have to put my foot down on this one. Oh, well, your mother makes a convincing argument.
Thankfully, these types of interactions become less frequent as the series goes on, and even in these early episodes, there are a good amount of moments that show how supportive and loving they are to each other. I think the real turning point for them is the episode Pal Joey, written by Jean Grillo. While in Australia, Nigel and Marianne try their best to give Debbie as close to a real junior prom experience as possible, and they don't do too bad a job. However, during the planning, Marianne reveals that she never actually went to her prom because she couldn't find anyone to go with.
Churchill's knickers, Marianne. That's astonishing.
Oh, I was perfectly okay with it. I spent a lovely night at home editing footage for my first documentary, The Mating Habits of Dust Mites.
But in helping Debbie get ready and seeing how happy she is dancing with her long-distance date, it does force Marianne to take pause and think if that night could have gone differently.
Not that I have any regrets, mind you.
I'm sure you don't, darling. But as long as we're on this subject, I couldn't help wondering if perhaps you'd do me the honor of being my prom date.
Oh, Nigel! Actually, I was going to edit some footage on the wallabies tonight, but this sounds so much nicer.
That about wraps it up for the main discussion on the Thornberrys, though there are a few other recurring characters who warrant a quick mention. Kip O'Donnell and Neil Biederman, played by Keith Zarabaka and Michael Jeter respectively, are recurring antagonists and very clearly gay lovers in a toxic relationship who come up with half-baked get-rich-quick schemes that often involve harming animals, such as cutting down the forest to make back scratchers in the episode Vacant Lot, or stealing oil from a tanker and causing a spillage in the episode You Oughta Know, though others are not nearly as sinister.
The drinky bird, a classic gift item. Can I have this one? I already give you 3.
It really is a complete toss-up whether or not the show treats them as a minor inconvenience or a legitimate threat, like in Quality and Quantity, where they steal a bunch of koalas with plans to sell them to the wealthy as exotic pets. And when Eliza discovers their plan and tries to stop them, they immediately jump to attempted child murder.
I have a feeling you won't be telling anyone anything. You see, there's all kinds of ways to keep a little brat quiet.
How Nigel and Marianne continue to act so casually around them, I don't know. Considering these guys are the closest thing the series has to main villains, they really don't appear as often as you'd think. Out of 91 episodes, they show up in 7, which according to my math is a very low percentage. In fact, their final appearance is in episode 45, so they completely disappear about halfway through the series. The only other characters I want to bring up are Franz and Frieda Fernstekopt, rich German filmmakers who serve as rivals to Marianne and Nigel, as they are essentially the Thornberrys if they had high-tech equipment and zero ethics. They only appear twice, with their second episode introducing their teenage daughter Lysol, who is friends with Debbie, and their son named Dida, whom Eliza previously met at summer camp as he constantly attempts to one-up her.
Remember how awesome it was when you came in second in the canoe building contest and I came in first?
Only because I didn't come to camp with a power saw.
And now that we're fully acquainted with every family member and have a good idea on how the series functions, we can move on to revisiting some memorable episodes and seeing all the qualities that made it so innovative and distinct from other shows at the time.
No ordering pizza from New York.
Mom, we only do that once.
In South Africa, we're still paying that delivery bill.
While the Wild Thornberrys is labelled an educational show, and those elements are important to its identity, I've always considered it more of an action cartoon, as it is positively packed with intense chase sequences and large set pieces. And nowhere is the adrenaline higher than in what I have dubbed the survival episodes, which are plentiful. As experienced world travellers, the Thornberrys are no stranger to encountering harsh weather conditions, such as sandstorms or flash floods, and know how to navigate them. However, sometimes situations arise that catch them completely off guard, meaning we get to see how great the family is at thinking on their feet. One of my all-time favourite examples is the episode Reef Grief, written by Alan Zipper and directed by Sylvia Quellen. When Donnie ruins Marianne's footage on the Wallaby by using it to go water skiing, she and Nigel have to split up so they can retake the footage and film the Great Barrier Reef before their deadline. Thus, Nigel and Eliza head out under the water. However, Eliza takes on more responsibility than she can handle and ends up causing them to flip over and sink. With Nigel's foot stuck in the hole to stop the water from getting in,
Funny. How's everything going?
Swimmingly. just swimmingly.
Eliza has to make up for her mistake by donning some scuba gear and figuring out a way to turn the convoy over so the flotation device can be deployed, while having to avoid a nearby shark. And to make matters worse, her oxygen tank springs a leak and she is rapidly losing air. While the rest of the family brainstorms a rescue plan, Eliza is able to befriend some dugongs, including one voiced by Katherine Hellmond, who has the attitude of an aging Hollywood starlet, longing for the days when Sailor confused her for a mermaid, a feeling Nigel is able to give her once again. With the dugongs and the family all working together, they are able to help free Nigel from the fathoms below. Thankfully, dealing with situations like these are a lot easier because of the family's selected mode of transportation, the convoy, one of the top 10 best fictional vehicles of all time. A two-story camper with the capability of traversing almost any environment. Sometimes. See, while it is equipped with a built-in flotation device, has modes that can combat any natural disaster you can think of, other times it can struggle to get up a slight incline and has been known to be stopped by mud. Even with its flaws, the family loves their deluxe home on wheels, as it has seen them through countless disasters. But what happens when they lose it and have to face the elements on their own? That idea is explored in a few episodes, though none are quite as dire as Thornberry Island, written by David Regal and directed by Becky Bristow. Why they went with that title and not Swiss Family Thornberry is beyond me. While attempting to cross the Pacific Ocean, the Thornberrys land on an uncharted desert island.
Hold on a second. We're not on the Cook Islands. According to this map, the island we're on doesn't even exist.
So the odds of having them all are extremely slim.
Due to a mishap with the new security system Nigel has recently installed, the convoy enters lockdown mode, trapping the family outside and leaving them stranded. And once again, you know it's bad when Nigel is the first person to point out how bleak things are.
Marianne, we've been in scrapes before, but none like this. It's rather my fault, and I'm so sorry.
Oh, it was an accident. We'll get through this somehow.
Most certainly. We'll, put our nose against the current and smell the roses.
The episode jumps ahead a few weeks as the Thornberrys have adjusted to life on the island, surviving off the only plentiful food source, coconuts. But over time, the stress causes the family to become more divided than ever, culminating with Eliza, Darwin and Donnie separating into their own faction. The family enters an all-out war, remaining entirely unaware of an approaching monsoon as they try and make it to higher ground, finding temporary solace in a cave which brings them back together as they reveal their deepest secrets.
Everybody, there's one thing I never told you, something I never told anyone. It's about me and animals. It's gonna be hard to believe, but I can...
Hold that thought, Eliza.
In a last-ditch effort to escape, the Thornberrys try to use a makeshift lightning rod to zap the convoy, in the hopes it'll short-circuit and reset the security system, something that works thanks to Eliza. The family make it inside mere moments before the convoy is swept away and the island is lost beneath the waves. The thing that really stands out about this episode is the shocking lack of comedy. There's a few one-liners every now and then, and Debbie has her moments as always, but it really does lean into the severity of the situation, showing how desperate and scared the family become the more time they are stuck on the island.
So, Eliza, what was that you were saying about you and animals?
The Wild Thornberrys will be right back on Nickelodeon.
The jungle is jumping for Wild Thornberrys Toon Cards on Nick.com. Make your very own animated postcard starring Eliza and Darwin and email them to your friends. For the wildest Toon Cards on the web, log on to Nick.com.
Now back to the Wild Thornberrys, only on Nickelodeon.
One of the aims the writers had for the show was for its stories to be built on scientific truth, and that it could educate its audience about other cultures, teaching them tolerance and to embrace diversity. Though while I can respect those intentions, the final result often ends up being a rather mixed bag. Let's talk about the good parts first. Several episodes do successfully educate about traditions of other cultures and the different ways people across the world live, and it shows the Thornberrys take an active interest and be excited to learn this stuff, like in The Legend of Halong Bay, where the subplot features Marianne, Debbie and Donnie experiencing Lunar New Year. A point is made of how respectful they always try and be, taking the customs of the places they visit seriously.
I promised Adam Whitcomb, the interpreter for the bush people, we'd perambulate on foot to keep our modern world out of their ancient one.
And if there ever is a case of them being closed-minded and ignorant, the episode will firmly call them out on it. In Dinner with Darwin, Marianne and Nigel stumble across a village in the jungles of Brazil where they quickly make assumptions about its inhabitants, characterizing them as primitive people whose entire way of life would be thrown in jeopardy if they saw them or their modern technology. And this all builds to a great punchline where the pair are left with egg on their faces.
You speak English?
Of course. You want to borrow my language tapes? Sounds like you need to practice.
The best world travel episodes focus on that element of the Thornberrys excitedly throwing themselves into these experiences and forming connections with others. One of the more remembered episodes of the series is titled Spirited Away. Written by Sarah Jane Cunningham and Susie Valandri, the Thornberrys are staying in Oaxaca, Mexico to experience Dia de los Muertos, where Eliza meets a new friend named Lena who introduces her to what the festival is about.
You mean I might get to see a spirit while I'm here? You never know.
When they all visit the cemetery, Eliza finds an abandoned grave due to that person having no relatives in the village, and quickly tries to spruce it up.
What's happening?
I've never seen that happen before. Do you have any magical powers I don't know about?
Meanwhile, Debbie is invited to make bread with Lena's mother, Marta. However, Donnie ends up putting her grandmother's ring in one of them, so all the kids have to team up to stop the bread from being delivered so they can retrieve the piece of jewelry.
Oh, come on! We're sisters! We help each other out.
We never do that.
Well, let's start, you little Creighton!
Throughout the episode, Eliza encounters a woman, Rosario Vega, played by Elma Beltran, who is visiting for the festival and helps them locate the ring.
You must be mistaken. Rosario Vega is, not with us anymore.
Rosario, su tumba está ahí.
Thanks, Rosario. You're the best.
This is an example of something that becomes fairly common later in the show's run, where if the Thornberrys learn about a legend or belief that is important to another culture, by the end of the episode, it will be undoubtedly proven true. Early on, there's some plausible deniability. In Only Child, they never fully confirm whether Zhao is actually the dolphin from the legend, but it is heavily implied. But when we get to episodes like this, or You Ain't Seen Nothing Yeti, there is no ambiguity. Then on the other side, you have instances where people representing other cultures are depicted exclusively as the villains of the story. Like the episode Darwin Plays the Palace, where Darwin is taken by an Indian prince who is portrayed as cruel and violent, and that is also the case for the palace guards. Which brings us to quite possibly my least favourite episode from the original run, Luck Be an Aye. While the family are in Madagascar, Donnie abducts an aye to keep as a pet and takes him to a village where the lemurs are considered to be bad luck, which is a real thing and one of the reasons why the species is considered endangered.
That's crazy. Animals don't bring bad luck. That's super...
An interesting local belief, Eliza, especially when coming from the owner of the only repair shop in 50 miles.
When the aye named Karoo is discovered by the villagers, they immediately grab their weapons and begin hunting it down. But this is the Wild Thornberrys, so we are firmly on the side of the animal even after the superstition is proven to be true.
I never did anything to those people. Why are they chasing me? Why?
That's not even the part of the episode that really irks me. It's the fact that Eliza is so mean to this girl Antoinette for no reason, and there's no purpose to it. She doesn't learn that she was wrong and apologizes. This little girl shows up in a few scenes and is only there for Eliza to be uncharacteristically awful to her. Then the very next episode does something similar, only this time Eliza is clearly positioned as being in the wrong. Tamper-Proof Seal, written by Scott Gray and David Regal, sees the Thornberrys once again separated from the convey when a herd of seals surrounds it and refuses to let them pass. So Nigel decides to build an igloo.
An ice house. No way am I gonna play Eskimo!
Bit of a boo-boo, pumpkins. The proper term nowadays is Inuit.
Eliza makes a deal with Alida that if she can bring them fish, the family will be allowed through. During this whole adventure, Eliza's friend Jim offers his help, but she is incredibly dismissive of him, as he tries to explain to her the way Inuit people catch fish. Though this time Eliza learns the error of her ways and apologizes for not listening. Thanks to a whale friend they made, they are able to get the seals enough fish that the Thornberrys can go back inside the convey.
It's a shame we couldn't spend just one night in our fabulous ice palace. Yes. Well.
The family heads off as Eliza goes to bid farewell to Jim.
In our language, there's no word for goodbye. I'll see you again.
We have a word for that in our language. Later.
Something I hadn't realised until this rewatch, where I made an effort to go through the episodes in production order, is how the show is essentially split into pseudo-story arcs. When the Thornberrys land on a different continent, the next handful of episodes will all take place there, which gives the viewer the sense that they are travelling with the family in somewhat real time, especially when we get to see them moving from one destination to another. Like the episode Chewith by Sea, which sees the family leave Australia, where the previous episodes have taken place, and make their way to India, where the following episodes are set. This also helps the series come across a tad more realistic, since the family are not in a completely different time zone every episode. Or that's how it would be had Nickelodeon not messed up and aired the series in a completely random order. To give you an idea of what I mean, let's look at the show's first 20 episodes. The series opens with a family travelling through several countries in Africa until episode 5, where they go to South America and remain there until episode 16. Then they're exploring Southeast Asia until episode 20. Perfectly logical and consistent. So how did Nickelodeon air those episodes? Well, the series starts in Tanzania, then they go to Brazil and Ecuador, only to return to Africa and see the Democratic Republic of Congo. Then back to Brazil for 3 episodes, back to Tanzania, Uganda, then to Peru, quick stop in Ecuador once more because they forgot something, return to Tanzania one more time, then head off to Indonesia before travelling a few thousand miles to get back to Peru, but make it a round trip because we gotta turn right around for 4 more episodes set in Indonesia. Are this family simply immune to jet lag? And this is made even more confusing because sometimes episodes will name drop the location the family were in previously. In episode 14, the family are travelling to Cusco. Then in episode 15, Debbie says,
Why didn't you just leave me in Cusco? I could have stayed in the hotel room and watched TV.
We got one channel.
That's one more than out here.
Though the production order also comes with its own share of problems. In episode 18, Eliza mentions that the family are leaving for Australia the next day. However, the first story to take place in Queensland isn't until episode 24, so neither the airing or the production order are entirely chronological. Meaning, if you wanted to have the most authentic Wild Thornberrys viewing experience, you would need someone to meticulously comb through the entire series and make note of all these discrepancies, wasting no doubt hours of their finite time on this earth, all to come up with the definitive episode order for this 90s cartoon that very few people still care about. There'll be a list in the description. The final important episode category I want to get into is the environmental episodes, which serve to teach the audience about natural ecosystems as well as the importance of preservation, often exploring the effect of man's interference and the threat it poses to local wildlife. In Eliza-Cology, written by David Regal and directed by Kathy Melkasian, the Thornberrys are in the Galapagos Islands to film sea turtles laying their eggs. But when Eliza meets a finch who is struggling to get food, she helps him out by giving him and later all the other birds needles in the hopes of making their lives easier. But this has devastating consequences as the new advantage given to the finches completely disrupts the entire food chain, until it causes the sea turtles to turn around as Eliza figures out the harm she's caused.
Darwin, finches eat larvae, right? What if the finches ate all the larvae? Larvae become insects. Fish eat insects. Other animals eat fish. Without the insect larvae, the food chain falls apart. It's all my fault.
So she takes back all the needles and is able to set everything right, even catching up with the sea turtles and convincing them to go to the beach after all. This is the episode people always point to when complaining about Eliza, saying she only ever causes problems. Because God forbid women do anything. Y'all expect me to believe that you want more complex female characters when you can't even handle a 12-year-old who sometimes makes mistakes? I'm not on board with this view of her because I like how flawed she is. That she's allowed to be wrong sometimes and have the episode call her out on it. It makes her a more interesting and complex protagonist. Her desire to help sometimes leads to her overstepping, like in the episode 2's Company written by David Regal and Monica Piper, which is about her desperation to help a pair of elderly tortoises get busy so they can stop the species from going extinct. But because Eliza doesn't understand their mating rituals and insists they do things the human way, it all nearly falls apart, though she's able to fix it in the end. People will honestly have you believe that this series is nothing but Eliza causing problems for the animals that she talks to, when those stories are few and far between. I don't think people take into account the stressful situations Eliza is often placed in because of her powers. She's a child constantly being asked to make these difficult decisions by these animals whose lives are often hanging in the balance because she is their only hope. It also ignores the many times where she is able to help them. The episode Vacant Lot, written again by Monica Piper and directed by Kathy Mulcahy, is about her fighting against deforestation which is being caused by Kip and Biederman in their latest get-rich-quick scheme.
Who doesn't love back scratches?
However, despite her best efforts, she can't stop the machine alone. So she unifies the animals of the forest to use their unique abilities, with their coordinated attack finally doing the trick.
Oh, look, dear. It's Eliza stepping out from the middle of the mayhem.
Eliza, mayhem?
What sets these episodes apart from the survival ones, despite them appearing to be quite similar, is how they highlight the helplessness of the animals. When the Thornberrys are placed in precarious situations, they make it through because they can adapt and have prior knowledge of what course of action needs to be taken. The animals are often dealing with something unfamiliar and can't divert from their natural instincts, at which point Eliza's meddling becomes a necessity. One episode that really sticks with me is You Ought to Know, written by Sheila M. Anthony and directed by Sylvia Quellen. The Thornberrys are camping on the Russian peninsula of Kamchatka, where Eliza quickly befriends a raft of sea otters, despite them initially being reluctant to trust a human. Later in the day, the otters become frightened when they spot a ship off the coast.
First the ship comes, and there's a strange, awful smell.
Like what?
I don't know, but it gets worse. And then the water gets warm and thick, and you can't swim.
Due to a plot by Kip and Biederman to siphon the Russian tanker, they end up causing an oil spill.
What if we hide the evidence?
And just how do you suggest we do that?
I don't know. You're the brains.
And don't forget it!
From the first sign of danger, the immediate natural response from the otters is to swim to the safety of the island they live on. However, doing so means they are heading directly towards the oil, leaving Eliza with no other option except taking a boat to snatch them all out of the water and keeping them inside the convoy. But in her haste, she misses one and has to go back out there, where she discovers the oil has now caught on fire. She reaches the last otter in time, but they are now all trapped, with the rest of the family arriving and airlifting them out of there. Kip and Biederman are caught, and considering this is their final appearance in the series, are likely arrested for good this time, and the oil spill is cleaned up. By all accounts, this should be a happy ending. But it isn't. A point is made about how these animals will always remain under threat due to human interference. Because the next time something like this happens, the Thornberrys won't be there, concluding the episode on this somber note.
Take care.
We'll be right back to the Wild Thornberrys on Nickelodeon.
The Wild Thornberrys are coming to your PlayStation in the exciting Animal Adventures game.
Go for Eliza's home!
It's 14 wild games in one. The Wild Thornberrys Animal Adventures game for PlayStation Game Console, rated E.
Now we're back to the Wild Thornberrys on Nickelodeon.
One element of the series we don't receive much information on are Nigel and Marianne's employers, who are the ones funding their documentaries and as such are responsible for everything we see take place. Only ever referred to as the Foundation, across over 80 episodes we learn very little about the organisation and who runs it. This element of the series is there to both explain how the Thornberrys can afford all this globetrotting, while also serving as a constant source of narrative stakes, as Nigel and Marianne typically have to capture footage of certain rare and elusive animals while on a time crunch, explaining why they always have to leave the kids at camp, thus allowing Eliza to wander off on her adventures. And now, call me crazy, but Marianne Thornberry does not come across as someone who procrastinates. So when a point is made of how they are constantly on the verge of being late when it comes to getting footage, that tells me that the Foundation are setting them unreasonable deadlines. And if the Thornberrys don't meet them, they risk losing their funding, something that has been present as far back as the pilot.
They said you'd have to do it today or they'd stop your funding. Stop funding the television show? No funding!
As the series goes on, it becomes increasingly clear how little Nigel and Marianne's bosses care for their well-being. Like in the episode Hello Dolphin, where they are tasked with filming a tiger shark without using a cage. But the most deafening example is Thornberry Island, where the family are marooned for weeks, and despite Marianne's early insistence, the Foundation does not send anyone to look for them. While it has been locked down, the convoy is still fully operational, meaning the GPS and everything is in working order. They could easily track them down if they wanted to, but instead, the family are left to fend for themselves because the Foundation does not care about them. There is one episode of the series where the Foundation isn't this mysterious background element driving the narrative and gets to be the focus. We've seen instances of the Foundation meddling in the Thornberrys' creative process and making odd demands in several episodes.
They'd like our next film to be zippier.
Zippier?
But episode 53, A Shaky Foundation, feels like a thematic resolution to that storyline. Written by David Regal and directed by Carol Millican, this story sees the family land on the Zambezi River in search of a rock hyrax where they have to deal with an unexpected visitor.
Tom Ravenhurst, new VP of Programming for the Foundation. I'm a big fan.
Any relation to Ellery Ravenhurst, the president of the Foundation, who looks a bit like you, only very much older?
My dad.
I would also like to point out the family had only moments before touched down in the mountains and were completely caught off guard by Tom's sudden appearance, confirming that yes, the Foundation can track the convoy's precise location, meaning they could have easily found them at any point during the events of Thornberry Island. So this Nepo baby claims to be here to learn about how the Thornberrys film their documentaries and help them with anything they need. However, this turns out to be a lie as he takes over the entire operation, installing an automatic sound-activated camera to replace Marianne and losing control of the convoy, nearly sending him and the kids over the waterfall. Plus, he's really condescending towards Eliza the entire time.
Excuse me, but I gotta go.
Sorry, kiddo, but I need the binoculars. They help me see things far away. Little things become big.
Yeah, I know.
It's magical, isn't it?
Also, he spends the entire episode pretty much trying to flirt with Debbie. She's 16. In the end, after Tom has been traumatized by an average day with the Thornberrys, he fully backs off and things return to normal. There is one other case of the Foundation forcing unnecessary changes to the nature show, but that will come up much later. We've already touched upon the strong sense of continuity within the show, something that wasn't typical for a Nicktoon in this era. But I think it's worth discussing how the writers use these various callbacks and what they add to the show. You wouldn't expect a series like this, where the family are often in a new location each episode, to feature returning characters, but many of Eliza's animal friends do make second appearances later in the run, no matter how implausible it sometimes is. For instance, in episode 65, Dragging Me Along, the Thornberrys are in China where Eliza is hanging out with her pen pal Ling. But this is interrupted when Eliza recognises two pandas in a cage as Shisho and Meimei, whom she previously met in episode 41. There isn't any exposition given where they quickly recap the events of that episode, you're simply expected to have that knowledge. And every so often, the show uses one of these returning characters to confirm that time is progressing within the world of the show. Episode 59 is titled Happy Old Year and sees the return of Santusa, the llama Eliza and Nigel took up the Andes all the way back during Nigel Knows Best, with it being stated the events of that episode, and by extension all of Season 1's South America adventures, took place during last spring. A similar thing occurs in episode 46, The Kungenai, where it's mentioned Nigel and Marianne have been nominated for their third International Nature Documentarian Award, a ceremony we'd previously seen them attend in episode 19, Lost in Foundation, reinforcing that over a year has passed since the first episode, meaning Eliza should be 13 and Debbie should be 17. But sometimes you don't need to establish how long it's been since we started, you can simply reference a minor character detail from over 30 episodes ago, just to flex that you hadn't forgotten it. Marianne's history as a junior rodeo champion is first brought up in episode 34, Rebel Without a Trunk, which you'll remember is the Eliza and Marianne bonding episode. The fact she's ridden horses before is briefly mentioned again in episode 52, but this aspect of her character is an essential part of the narrative in episode 66, Horse Sense, where Eliza enters a horse race that's part of the Nadam Festival in Mongolia and asks Marianne to help her train.
Mom, would you help me train for the horse race?
You want me to be your trainer?
Sure. You did win the Junior Rodeo Championship. Who knows more about horses and winning than you?
Oh, well, when you put it that way, I'd love to.
And it caught me off guard to see such an obscure detail suddenly come up again, especially because both episodes had different writers. This isn't Nigel's fascination with cowboys or Debbie's favourite musician being Desperodine, which are brought up so much they become integral parts of those characters. This was a random fact about Marianne's past that was only relevant to one episode, which makes me think someone on the writing staff had to be keeping track of this stuff. Such minor details not being forgotten goes a long way in making the characters feel more alive, like everything we learn about them matters. Something you didn't really find in a lot of episodic cartoons back then. During this era, the true mark of success for an animated series was how many guest stars it was able to collect. Mainly thanks to The Simpsons, getting high-profile names to appear on your show became this status symbol, and across its run, the Wild Thornberrys amassed quite the impressive lineup. Looking at the episode credits, you'll of course come across the usual voice acting suspects. Tom Kenny, Pamela Adlon, Greg Eagles, D. Bradley Baker, Cree Summer, April Winchell, Russi Taylor, and all those other guys we adore. But likely because of how massive Nickelodeon was at the time, it feels like every other episode has this big star, sometimes playing a random animal who is only in it for a few scenes. The first episode to air was Flood Warning, an episode in which Cheryl Lee Ralph and Eartha Kitt play a pair of lionesses. To quickly name a few other names you might recognise, there's Sally Struthers, Doris Roberts, Alfred Molina, Phyllis Diller, Rasco Lee Brown, Kerry McGillis, Alison Hannigan, Brock Peters, and in a career-defining role, Dom DeLuise as Baby Condor. But of all these guest stars from the original run, 3 in particular stand out, due to either becoming recurring characters, or because of how notable their appearance was. Nigel Knows Best was our introductory look into the complicated relationship between Marianne and her mother, Sophie.
Debbie, may I see that, please? Alrighty, let's do your disappointment. Sorry, can't give your family everything they deserve because of your little career, so I've taken the liberty to send some goodies to your poor dear children. How thoughtful.
This storyline focuses on the rift between them due to Sophie's strong disapproval of Marianne choosing to raise her family while maintaining an active and successful career, showing a clear generational divide and also highlighting why Marianne was, and sadly still is, such a radically refreshing example of a mother character. Though don't expect this aspect to be brought up again, at least in as nearly as much detail, because they certainly softened Sophie up for her first on-screen appearance, especially after Betty White was cast in the role.
Hi, Mom. You remember Donnie?
The little wild boy.
I love what you've done to his hair.
In the episode, A Tiger by the Tail, written by Adam B. Ken and Kate Boutillier, Marianne is on edge preparing for her mother to visit them while in Russia.
Honey, don't forget to wash the mud off the wheels. And see those little pebbles embedded in the tire treads? Grandma will spot those a mile away. Anyone have a nail file?
However, the woman who shows up in camp is a lot different than the one being described previously. Having joined an adventure class back home, she is now a daring risk-taker, something she demonstrates by climbing a tree. This quickly gets under Marianne's skin, as not only does her mother have a completely new disposition, but she's gone from criticising her parenting to criticising her outdoor skills.
Such a lovely fire. Marianne, you should never use green wood. I learned that in class.
Thanks for the tip.
Later in the adventure, we learn the cause of this change in Sophie. She regrets having wasted so much of her life never taking a risk, so she wants to spend the rest of it trying to be brave, like her daughter. And that revelation fully allows her and Marianne to reconcile.
Honey, this is your life. If this makes you happy, I'm happy.
Really?
Really.
While this storyline is resolved, Sophie remains a recurring character throughout the rest of the run, making 3 other major appearances which also introduce her husband and Marianne's father, Frank, played by Ed Asner. The most well-known guest star the show ever had was the incredible Jane Goodall, with this being her first, and for the longest time, only acting credit. I technically started this project over a year ago before she recently passed, and it's difficult to put into words what an utterly remarkable woman she was. There are few people in all of human history that were able to change the entire world, and even less of them can say they did it for the better. And she was one of them. Her making an appearance in the Wild Thornberrys was not only fitting, considering the show is about the importance of nature, but there were also multiple references to Dr. Goodall in the early episodes, as if this was something they were intentionally building to.
She's talking to the monkey again. My sister, Jane Weird-All.
In The Trouble with Darwin, written by David Regal, Jill Gorey, and Barbara Herndon, the Thornberrys are back in Tanzania to film the grand opening of Jane Goodall's new chimp sanctuary, where Eliza is ecstatic to meet her hero and bond over their mutual love of animals.
Do you think she'll like me?
Of course, she'll love you. After all, she's devoted her life to chimps.
Oh, I like her already.
Jane Goodall does not like Darwin. In fact, she finds the trouble with Darwin, disapproving of him living with the Thornberrys, which leaves Eliza devastated.
She thinks it's wrong to keep you from living in the wild.
But I don't want to live in the wild. That's why I moved in with you.
While trying to comfort her, Darwin is captured by poachers, but Eliza is able to sneak into their truck and use the radio to alert everyone at the sanctuary as they all leap into action. But with security taking their sweet time, Goodall takes matters into her own hands.
What are you going to do when you encounter those poachers?
I'm not sure. Wish me luck.
Eliza and Dr. Goodall run into each other while both are in the middle of deflating the truck's tyres.
Must be true that great minds think alike.
The rest of the family swoop in and capture the poachers using a built-in playground Nigel recently installed for Donnie, ensnaring them in the climbing net. The animals are all free as Eliza and Darwin reunite, with Dr. Goodall witnessing it and understanding how deep their connection is.
I definitely think it's wrong to keep a chimp as a pet, and to make them do tricks or dress them up.
I see.
And I promise I would never ever do that with any other wild animal on Earth. But Darwin's not
like other animals.
Yes, how did you know?
I'm pretty observant. That's my job after all. And I'd say you two have an almost magical relationship, wouldn't you?
I guess you could say that.
Having Jane Goodall be the one regular human to learn about Eliza's powers purely by picking up on the context clues is such a power move, and it really adds to how special this entire episode feels.
Now, what's the story with Donnie?
There is one other guest star notable enough to mention in this breakdown because his involvement with the series was treated as this big event, appearing in 6 episodes that were meant to form their own mini-arc.
Nick on CBS presents the Wild Thornberrys Clash of the Cousins. 5 weekends, 5 heavyweight episodes filled with drama, adventure, and crazed cousin competition. The champ, Eliza Wild Woman Thornberry. The challenger, Tyler the Cousin Tucker, voiced by Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
Yeah, whatever. Just bring it on.
The Wild Thornberrys Clash of the Cousins continues this weekend on Nick on CBS.
Season 3 introduces Tyler Tucker, Eliza and Debbie's cousin, played by possibly the biggest child star of the 90s, Jonathan Taylor Thomas. An undeniably massive get for the show. Too bad these episodes are incredibly underwhelming. Tyler joins the cast in the episode titled Tyler Tucker, I presume, where we learn he is going to be travelling with the Thornberrys for an entire month, effectively becoming a new temporary main character who is the primary focus of most of the ensuing episodes. And I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion, but I don't find him charming. I just think he's obnoxious, and his presence drags down some really fun episode premises, like the return of the Maasai people who previously appeared in episode 10, or exploring a tomb in Egypt. A point is made in his first appearance to draw some parallel between him and Eliza.
He always teases me and tries to get me into trouble. You have no idea.
No, I can't imagine. No, haven't the foggiest. No, not a clue.
And the two do share quite a few personality traits. They are both prideful, often arrogant, refuse to listen to others, and never think before they act, which often ends up causing problems. However, while Eliza is balanced out by having plenty of admirable traits, Tyler does not, as that is pretty much all there is to him. He's all the worst parts of Eliza without any of the justification. Eliza's misplaced confidence that leads her into these deadly situations is entirely tied to her being able to talk to animals. Tyler's just an idiot, and it becomes frustrating watching him exhibit behaviour that the narrative would usually and rightfully punish Eliza for, but consistently lets him get away with it. And this show already has a character whose purpose is to create problems for the family. Donnie. But his actions are understandable because he's 4 and doesn't know any better. Tyler is a 12-year-old with the voice of a fully grown man, which is a lot less endearing.
That's your plan? Roaring back? Great, my cousin's lost her mind. Here's my plan. Aunt Marianne, help! We're trapped!
I have to imagine this was some kind of mandate from Nickelodeon because there is a noticeable drop in quality during these episodes. They're not unwatchable and there are some really good jokes, but the show kind of loses focus. Besides Darwin, Eliza talking to animals happens a lot less frequently, foregoing the entire premise of the show to explore her relationship with this new character who the audience has been given little reason to care about. Did anyone else get an incredibly foreboding feeling just now? There is one episode from the Tyler arc I do enjoy, mainly because it's the only one where he isn't the direct cause of the conflict, and that is Island Trade, written by Rick Chitelson and Joan Considine Johnson. The Thornberrys are on the island of Zanzibar to film the Ngorongoro crater, a natural sanctuary for African mammals. While her parents are away, Debbie takes the kids to the Stone Town Market to take part in the centuries-old tradition of trading, where she accidentally trades the convy for a dress, believing the merchant simply wanted a ride somewhere. So the kids have to work together to chase him across the island and get their camper back before Nigel and Marianne find out. It's actually amazing how soon as he gets put into more of a supporting role where he isn't constantly causing problems for everyone, Tyler becomes far more likable and pleasant to be around. There's even a sweet moment where he offers one of his prized possessions to help them get back the convy. And then his parents come get him in the following episode and we never see him again. At the very start of this, I claimed that The Wild Thornberrys was a boundary-pushing series, in how it really was a pioneer for more complex stories told in all-ages cartoons, taking advantage of the audience's investment in these characters to create honest and engaging episodes. So let's talk about the times where the series was the cause of significant emotional damage by refusing to sugarcoat the brutality of nature. While obviously nothing even close to graphic ever occurs on screen, the show does not pull its punches when it comes to depicting how ruthless the animal kingdom can be. But because the show goes to great lengths to humanize many of the animals Eliza comes in contact with, it really makes these moments all the more startling.
I've just got to be in here! Oh, please tell me the dragon didn't eat my eggs!
There's an especially fucked up episode of the series called Show Me the Bunny, written by Adam B. Ken and directed by Becky Bristow. While the family is in Lapland, Eliza befriends an incredibly paranoid mountain hare who later comes to her when she starts being hunted by a stoat. Eliza believes that she can save the hare by keeping it inside of the convey where they can simply wait out the predator. However, once a stoat begins tracking an animal, nothing can change its mind, as what follows starts feeling like a horror movie, with this feeling of hopelessness setting in as nothing Eliza does to trick the stoat into giving up works. But like I said, it's all based on scientific fact, like the stoat dancing in order to hypnotize its prey. Doesn't mean it's not disturbing.
Say, that looks like fun. Take me outside, Eliza.
Stop! Ugh.
The episode really lays it on that this bunny is doomed, and Eliza can't do anything to truly help it, until the tables seemingly turn.
That's right! In the winter, stoats become ermines, and ermines are hunted for their fur. That's not fair! Let him go!
Wave goodbye, little girl. Next time you see this airman, he'll be somebody's coat.
Eliza and Darwin leave to rescue the stoat as soon all four of them are on the run from the hunters and have to work together to escape.
Who would have thought a hare and a stoat could work together?
Yeah, and the rabbit still smells delicious.
Wait!
But this time, Eliza has no choice but to step aside and let nature take its course. And as the family drives away, we catch one final glimpse of the hare still being chased, likely getting caught moments after the fade to black. Now, wasn't that a fun, light-hearted romp? I mean, just listen to the nice bouncy music playing throughout the entirety of it that is definitely not a massive tonal dissonance from how messed up the story is, being about Eliza coming to terms with the imminent demise of her new friend. Speaking of Eliza coming to terms with the imminent demise of her new friend, we cannot talk about the emotional damage this series inflicted on an unsuspecting audience without bringing up perhaps its most famous episode, Forget Me Not, written by Alea Horwitz and Kate Buttilia. This story is somewhat of a follow-up to the first episode, Iron Curtain, featuring the return of Nigel's best friend from Oxford, Jomo, and referencing things like Debbie giving Donnie English lessons for the first time in ages.
It's your turn to watch Donnie.
No problemo, Mom. Maybe I'll give him an English lesson.
20 years ago, while on safari in Kenya, Nigel and his friends rescued an elephant from some poachers, which was the moment that inspired Nigel to become a naturalist. Since then, that elephant, who he named Rebecca, has grown up to become the matriarch of her herd, the last one still living outside the reserve, which is why the Thornberrys and Jomo have returned to look for them.
I am constantly torn between wanting to protect the elephants and wanting them to be free.
We feel the same way. That's why I suggested to the Foundation that we film Rebecca's herd.
With the help of her powers and Rebecca's grandson, Eliza is able to find the herd, including Rebecca, where she is elated to finally meet her and learn that she still remembers Nigel.
An elephant never forgets, especially not a man as kind as your father.
While Eliza is spending a perfect afternoon with Rebecca, the other Thornberrys discover her daughter Zita stuck in a mud pit, and they all convene to save her when Nigel and Rebecca have their emotional reunion.
Marianne, she remembers me.
You are quite memorable, dear.
The moment Zita is free, Rebecca and the other elephants leave as Eliza catches up to them by sunset, which is when reality sets in. Throughout the episode, numerous mentions have been made that Rebecca is becoming increasingly tired, with all the other elephants acting cagey about her. When Zita was stuck, her only concern was that she got to see her mother.
It's very important that I see her before...
Before what?
I just have to see her.
Eliza learns that Rebecca's time in the circle of life is nearing its end.
I have raised a lot of calves who are now raising calves of their own. I've been head of the herd for more seasons than I can count. And my time has come.
Both guest star Marianne Ross and Lacey Chabert deliver exceptional performances in their emotional goodbye, recounting all the wonderful things they did earlier.
How wonderful. You remember...
I'll never forget today, or you. And neither will my father.
Such a good man. Thank you for reuniting me with my old friend.
Soon after she passes, Nigel arrives, and Tim Curry is phenomenal in the episode's closing moments, perfectly conveying how Nigel is also processing the loss while comforting his daughter.
Are you okay, Poppet?
It just doesn't seem fair.
I know. But Rebecca lived right up to the last. I can only guess what her final thoughts were, but I imagine they were peaceful.
I bet she had a really good life, Dad.
It really shouldn't be a surprise that this episode ended up winning a Genesis Award, which are awards given to works that raise public awareness of animal issues. It was also included as one of the 100 greatest moments in Nicktoon history in a marathon the channel ran in 2007, at number 100. Because while it is an award-winning masterpiece, it simply couldn't compete with Back at the Barnyard's Cowman and Rat Boy, which took the number 19 spot. Arbitrary ranking for a random TV marathon aside, this episode also marks a pivotal moment for Eliza as a character, as this experience does have an impact on her, especially in a later episode which returns to Rebecca's herd.
I remember this place. Rebecca brought me here.
Stay Nicktooned for the Wild Thornberrys. Coming up next, right here on the home of Nicktoons, Nickelodeon.
What do big kids want? More air! More moves! More half-pipes! More food. Big kids want to be treated like big kids.
So you can come to Burger King and get a Burger King Big Kids meal served your way with more great tasting food, fun, and of course, a cool toy. The Wild Thornberrys are going on an adventure. To the jungle. To the mountains. To Burger King. The Wild Thornberrys adventure toys are now at Burger King. 4 in all. One with every tasty Burger King Big Kids meal you buy.
That rocks!
Taste rules.
Now back to the Wild Thornberrys.
Before we can fully wrap up our discussion on the original run, I want to introduce a very important segment called 3 more episodes I wanted to bring up but couldn't find a natural way to work them into the rest of the analysis. The only thing that links them is they all take place towards the end of the show, being episodes 73, 75, and 76, with them all being set in Australia. So in a way, it makes perfect sense to talk about them here. Operation Valentine, written by Alice Miller, is the only true rival to Thornberry Island in terms of being the most dramatic and serious episode. From the opening shot, this episode is far more cinematic than usual. There's also a surprising level of continuity. Debbie is excited to see her boyfriend Sven, whom she began a long-distance relationship with over a year ago during the events of the episode Pal Joey, the one where Nigel and Marianne gave her a homemade junior prom. When Eliza gets a Valentine's card from a secret admirer and Debbie teases her, she lists some of the guys that she thinks it might have come from.
There's lots of guys who could have sent this, like Ben or Miguel or Dieter.
It's probably from Grandma Sophie.
The Thornberrys are spending Valentine's Day in the Northern Territory of Australia, where, while out climbing with Darwin, Eliza starts feeling a sharp pain in her side that soon leaves her unable to walk, as it becomes clear that her appendix has burst. With Eliza taken out of commission, it allows all of the family to step up and show their best. Darwin especially gets a brilliant showing with how he tries to look after Eliza while they go for help.
Lean on me. We have to get down from here.
I hope Donnie's okay.
Let's worry about you right now.
Donnie, upon finding Nigel, does his best to communicate what happened and leads him to Eliza. Once they figure out what's wrong, the episode becomes a race against time to get Eliza to a hospital, with Debbie cancelling her date to help. But the combi has broken down and the minicom has a flat tyre. However, Marianne has a solution. For months, she has been working on a special Valentine's gift for Nigel, which turns out to be a flying machine to help them get aerial footage that he can use to get Eliza to a hospital.
Something's really wrong, isn't it?
They think it's my appendix. Mom says you don't even need it.
So why have one at all? Eliza, get out of that thing.
I can't, Dar. Don't worry, I'll be back before you know it.
Nigel takes off, but their troubles are only beginning, as he has to outmaneuver an aggressive eagle and then guide them through a lightning storm, while Eliza's pain gets to a point where she begins hallucinating, reliving everything that happened that day.
Darwin, help me off this rock and get Mom and Dad, quick.
Eliza, what is it? You'll have to speak up. Oh, heavens, she's speaking gibberish.
But Nigel, of course, makes it through and successfully lands at the airport, and Eliza is finally taken to hospital, where she wakes up the following morning just as everyone else arrives.
And if I had a choice, I'd pick you over Sven. Well, just this once anyway, but don't try it again.
I want to compare it to the appendicitis episode of As Told by Ginger, A Lesson in Tightropes, a show that obviously shares a lot of staff with the Wild Thornberrys. In fact, both that episode and Operation Valentine were directed by Mark Risley. A Lesson in Tightropes is one of the final episodes of As Told by Ginger, and as such becomes a point where all the various storylines building up over the season converge, as the whole thing feels over the top with so much going on at once. Ginger is a grounded and often serious show, but this takes it a stretch too far, bordering on soap opera territory. The Thornberrys episode also goes for the melodrama, but that one earns its intensity with the daunting task of somehow getting Eliza medical attention, which comes with constant setbacks, and I enjoy seeing each family member show up for her in their own way, all tying back to the story's overarching theme of how far people will go for the ones they love. New Territory, written by Joan Considine Johnson and directed by Carol Millican, is an episode that explores living with a disability, focusing on how even people with good intentions can succumb to an ableist mindset. While visiting Kakadu National Park, the Thornberrys make some new friends, the Gibsons, but Eliza's demeanour entirely changes when she finds out their youngest daughter Bethany, played by Lucy Hagen, is in a wheelchair.
Debbie, did you see that Bethany was in a wheelchair?
Yeah, so?
I wonder why.
Because she was born with cerebral palsy. She uses crutches sometimes for short distances, but mainly sticks with the wheelchair.
While they're hanging out, Eliza is incredibly overbearing, infantilizing Bethany by stopping her from doing anything for herself, denying her autonomy, which Bethany very quickly notices.
Eliza's giving me that I feel bad that you're disabled look.
Don't worry, she'll be totally over it after you spend some time together.
Props to the episode for not only stating that Bethany has cerebral palsy, but actually using the word disabled instead of trying to dance around it. Because there's an attitude that it's rude or taboo to discuss this topic, which has created a stigma around the word itself, as if simply ignoring this thing that affects a person's lived experience makes it magically go away, something the episode quickly debunks.
How do you know all that?
I asked Jillian. She said that she...
Debbie, you can't just ask about something like that. It's not polite and it'll embarrass them and...
You spend all your time talking to a monkey, and you're telling me how to talk to people?
While Eliza is exhibiting ableist behaviour, Bethany is completely disregarding any valid concerns Eliza has, like her going up to some clearly agitated water buffalo, which causes the pair to blow up at each other and go their separate ways. But when a storm hits and Eliza becomes stuck by the riverbank, Bethany arrives to rescue her, and then Eliza helps out Bethany when her chair becomes stuck in a puddle, as they apologise while waiting out the bad weather. The episode is appropriately quite nuanced in its messaging, with how neither Eliza or Bethany were fully in the right or wrong for the entire episode, teaching that it's okay to offer help or accommodations to someone who is disabled, but not to force it on them or assume they want it, as that is denying them the autonomy and respect that every human is entitled to. And because of that, I think it serves as a useful education tool that combats harmful stigmas around disability. And finally, there's Hello Dolphin, written by Peter Egan and directed by Frank Marino. On the way to a dolphin research centre located on Shark Bay, Debbie becomes inconsolable when Sven breaks up with her via email.
Look at the bright side. Look, see here? He closes by saying, "I'm sure we can still be friends."
Wanting to get her sister's mind off her ex and hopefully help her feel better, Eliza convinces Debbie to join them in swimming with her new dolphin friends, which ends up doing the trick. After spending some time bonding with them, Debbie and the others decide to follow them out into deeper waters. But do you remember when I mentioned how in one episode the Foundation wants Marianne and Nigel to film a tiger shark without using a cage? Yeah, that's this episode. One of the dolphins, Colin, warns Eliza that sharks are heading their way, and on a dime the episode switches from pleasant to absolutely terrifying as Debbie cuts herself on some rocks, causing the sharks to smell her blood and go after her. Nigel and Marianne arrive, having been tracking the sharks, as Debbie barely makes it into their cage, which then breaks and traps her on the ocean floor. Despite her debilitating fear of sharks, within seconds Marianne is diving in and, with the help of the dolphins, gets Debbie out of the water. Once safely back on land and the family begins to calm down from all the excitement, Debbie opens up and apologizes for her earlier outburst where she blamed the rest of the family for why Sven broke up with her. While the action-packed third act is quite the adrenaline rush, what stands out about this episode is Debbie's story, how it takes her emotions seriously, and while it does find humour in the situation, never trivializes what she's going through. Eliza gets to be a supportive sister and show some real concern for her, and it all concludes with this poignant ending as Debbie is able to be fully honest with herself about her emotions.
Okay, you're right. Maybe I'm not totally fine, but I'm getting there.
Throughout the series, one mysterious question has always hung over the characters' heads.
What's the story with Donnie?
It has been made a point throughout many episodes how no one understands Donnie, with Nigel constantly questioning what, if anything, raised him.
There's something about that boy.
For 80 episodes, Donnie remained an enigma, one the audience no doubt was curious to learn more of. And so, to close out the original run, the crew put together a 4-part TV movie meant to provide some answers on our favourite gremlin child.
Deep in the jungles of Borneo lurks a mystery, and that dark secret could change the lives of the Thornberrys forever. The Wild Thornberrys are about to discover the origin of Donnie. Coming Saturday at 8, 7 Central on a TV near you, only on Nick.
The special opens with the family preparing to celebrate Donnie's birthday. Well, sorta.
Well, not exactly his birthday since we don't know his birthday, but it is the day we found him, so...
Ugh, whatever!
And to mark the occasion, the family have returned to the same place in Borneo where they found the wild child 2 years ago. A nice coincidence, as Nigel and Marianne have been tasked with finding a wild orangutan for their show, or else, and you won't believe this, they'll lose their funding. And if things can't get any worse, Nigel invited Sophie to join them for the celebration, something Marianne is thrilled about.
My mother!
Guess it takes more than one heartfelt reconciliation to undo years of resentment. Who knew? That'll have to wait though, as they have a meeting at the foster care centre to discuss Donnie, where it's revealed that they have made no progress in learning the identity of his birth parents, meaning for the time being, he will remain in the custody of the Thornberrys.
I must say, the lad's found his way into our hearts, as well as our hair.
Once they drop Donnie back off at the convy, Nigel and Marianne head to a local orangutan rehabilitation centre, where they learn poachers have been spotted, which are sadly very common in this area, as Eliza finds that nearly all the animals in this jungle are either untrusting or terrified of humans, though she quickly manages to befriend a troop of proboscis monkeys. But when Donnie's antics causes them to nearly get attacked by an alligator, Eliza's building frustration with him reaches a boiling point.
You have wrecked everything! From now on, you can stay home because I am never, ever taking you in the jungle again!
This causes Donnie to run off while she has her back turned, as they head deeper into the jungle to try and find him, but to no avail, causing Eliza to become racked with guilt over what she said.
Oh, Darwin. What if something terrible happens to him?
While all this has been going on, Marianne has broken her wrist in a rock climbing incident while she and Nigel are pursuing an orangutan, and Sophie arrives at camp to find only Debbie, quickly starting to worry about everyone else. Part 1 sets up all the stories we'll be following during the special, which will all intertwine by the end of Part 3. Starting with Debbie and Sophie, who try to ignore the growing dread from the rest of the family's absence by continuing to get ready for the party. But after a while, even Debbie can't deny that she's starting to grow concerned, as Sophie decides the pair will have to go out and look for them, calling back to her having joined an adventure class. While trekking through the jungle, they are found by natives, as for once, the Thornberrys haven't randomly met people from another culture who luckily speak English. This leads to a hilarious misunderstanding based entirely on Debbie's preconceived notions about non-white people. I thought she was better than this.
The caucasity of this bitch.
But as you can guess, she greatly misjudged the situation, as the tribe were inviting them to be part of a Katang ritual, meant to ward off evil spirits, something Sophie recognises since she read about it in book club. While trying to ask if they've seen the other Thornberrys, the pair discovered that this village knew Donnie from when he was a baby, as well as his birth parents. Nigel and Marianne continue in pursuit of the wild orangutan in spite of Marianne's injury, because remember, the people running the Foundation are incredibly evil.
Nigel, if we don't get some compelling footage of orangutans to send back to finish our documentary, we just may be out of a job and moving back to the States to live ordinary suburban lives.
Things soon go from bad to worse when they get caught in some rapids and lose control of their raft, causing Nigel to fall into the water as the pair are momentarily separated, and by the time they find each other, he's also injured.
This is just not our day.
As night falls, the two have no choice but to hunker down in a nearby cave where they emerge the next morning to find their orangutan, only to witness him be captured by poachers.
You! Get away from that orangutan! And you'll keep running if you know what's good for you!
After chasing them away, even with his bad ankle, because Nigel Thornberry is a force of nature in his own right, he and Marianne stumble on the poachers' camp using their radio to finally contact Debbie, who gets them caught up on everything they've missed.
And we have to find Donnie's real parents too, right after we help the village put out the fire. So, and...
Debbie? Debbie? Oh, I can't get her back.
Did she say Donnie's real parents?
I think so. And she also said... fire. Nigel?
Eliza and Darwin continue searching for Donnie, following the path of chaos left in his wake, but they seem to be constantly stuck one step behind him, as they have to start questioning the possibility that maybe he doesn't want to be found. This isn't helped when they meet a woman who tells them Donnie is returning to his family.
Child, please.
He belongs with us.
He's family. He's...
No, you're lying.
Though Eliza is quickly distracted from this revelation when they find a baby orangutan separated from her mother, believing if they help them reunite, maybe she'll know where Donnie is.
What if we have to give you back to your mother?
The trio's sleep is interrupted by a quickly growing forest fire, which they are unable to extinguish, so they make a break for the river. But the rising smoke is confusing the other animals who believe Donnie started the fire and as such don't trust Eliza.
Do you know who you're talking to? Say what you want about Donnie, but this girl wouldn't hurt a flea!
Please, listen to me.
This conflict is resolved when the troop of proboscis monkeys arrive and reveal the fire was started by a lightning bolt, not Donnie, causing the animals to finally let Eliza lead them to the river, which they reach by morning. However, there is still no sign of the baby orangutan's mother, thus Eliza attempts to call for her, which she honestly should have done a lot sooner because it quickly works. The mother recalls seeing Donnie years ago and points the pair in the direction of the village where she last saw his parents. Using the leftover smoke from the fire to guide them, everyone is able to make their way to the same strangler fig tree where the family join up with each other and finally locate Donnie moments before he is taken again.
Eliza, no!
Let me go! Donnie!
The conclusion to this epic saga opens with Rain putting out the last of the fire as the Thornberrys decide to head in the direction of where Marianne and Nigel first found Donnie. And it's here where the special starts to incorporate some sense of finality for the series. Like I said in my character breakdown, the most important Donnie relationships in the series are Debbie and Darwin, because he is the perfect comedic foil for both of them. Though for this entire special so far, they both have been hiding their true feelings, insisting they wouldn't miss Donnie and in fact would be glad to see him go. But now that they're seeing it actually unfold, both their walls start to crumble.
I know I've been saying all along what a pest he is, but I don't want him to stay in Borneo. I want him in the convy. putting worms up his nose and smashing rotten eggs in my fur and doing all those disgusting things he was born to do.
Donnie finally reaches the village where he once lived, with the Thornberrys not far behind, only stopping for a minute on the way to wait out a mudslide. Once they find Donnie again, he introduces them to the orangutans he's been staying with. The lady Eliza had met in the jungle walks out from one of the homes, introducing herself as Juanice, the village's medicine woman, who can finally tell the Thornberrys the true origin of Donnie. Donnie's birth family, much like the Thornberrys, were naturalists who fell in love with the rainforest and its wildlife so much they decided to settle down there. They had an especially strong bond with one particular mother orangutan, as they essentially began to raise their children together. One night, the orangutans were attacked by poachers who wanted to kill the mother and sell the baby as an exotic pet, something explained in part 1. And when Donnie's parents fought back, they were murdered. From then on, the orangutan mother had raised Donnie out of gratitude until the day she saw the Thornberrys and knew they were fit to be his new family.
Eyes full of tears, she said goodbye to the boy, knowing these humans would love him just as she and her son had loved him.
Upon looking closer at the photo, Marianne realizes that they met Donnie's parents, recognizing them as Michael and Lisa.
It was on our first trip to Borneo. They were here on their honeymoon.
Primatologists, planning on going to Africa to work with the gorillas.
They must have fallen in love with the orangutans and couldn't leave.
I think we know now, more than ever. We're meant to take care of Donnie.
After talking with the orangutan mother, Eliza realizes the perfect way to honor Donnie's parents would be to use all the footage they've taken in the documentary.
Eliza, that's a wonderful idea. Oh, except it's too late. We'd have to uplink it, and the deadline is only an hour away.
I'm afraid your mother's right, Poppet. We'd never make it.
We have to at least try.
I agree.
So do I. All right, Thornberrys, let's hit the road.
Now fully reunited, the entire Thornberry clan race back to the convey and, with them all working together, manage to get the footage sent with not a second to spare, allowing them to keep their jobs. The special ends with a celebration at the orangutan sanctuary from part 1, but this isn't the birthday party they were planning at the beginning. It's to celebrate the Thornberrys moving to officially adopt Donnie, as everyone tries to say something but are too overwhelmed with emotion.
What they're trying to say is, of all the jungle boys we could have found...
We're glad we found you.
This special truly was such a huge event, receiving nearly 4 million viewers on its premiere, and you can tell the crew put an intense amount of love and care into crafting all 4 chapters. Like Operation Valentine, these episodes have a much greater cinematic flair to them, really flexing what they could do even on a TV budget. Another thing I have to commend it for is the remarkable consistency in every part. Often with these kinds of specials or TV movies, they will be treated like standard episodes, with different teams being assigned to each section of the story, but all 4 episodes are credited to the same writing team of Joan Considine Johnson and Sheila M. Anthony, though each part did have its own director, those being Carol Millican, Joseph Scott, Dean Criswell, and Ron Noble respectively. They and everyone on the staff delivered not only an incredible television event, but a core memory for anyone who grew up with this show.
Come on, little brother.
It's not difficult to argue that this was envisioned as a potential series finale, as with answering the questions surrounding the show's most mysterious character, the series had really fulfilled its full potential, delivering 80 episodes of high-quality television that utilized the audience's investment in these characters to preach about important issues in a way that respected their intelligence. After all the places they'd visited, all the animals they'd met or helped, and all the ways these characters had grown, what more could they honestly do? That would be something the writers would have to figure out, because they weren't quite done with the Thornberrys yet, as what was coming on the horizon would change everything.
So, what is your next destination?
I'm not sure, but I believe it'll be anywhere and everywhere the animals take us.
While the origin of Donnie is a series highlight, in the grand scheme of things, it was merely only a test, experimenting with telling bigger stories using these characters in preparation for something else the team was cooking up. That's right, after 4 seasons of pushing the boundaries on television, the Thornberrys were heading to the big screen, and I cannot wait to talk about it next time. Yeah, this video is kinda over, as this project really ended up getting away from me. My discussion on the original run was not supposed to be anywhere near this long. It was meant to be a short 20 to 30 minute segment going over the general premise and a few notable episodes to act as setup for what the video was supposed to be about, the ending of the franchise and how its final few projects have impacted the show's legacy. However, I am now over 30 pages into this script because, as always, turns out I had a lot more to say than I thought. Thus, I've decided to do something different and split this into 2 parts, as a way to try and close the gap between uploads. The next video will be looking at the movie, Season 5, and Rugrats Go Wild. Then shortly after, I'll be uploading a director's cut of this project, which will include extra segments covering the show's video games, its representation in theme parks, and more. So if you don't want to miss out on the rest of this adventure, remember to subscribe to the channel. That way you'll know exactly when I upload those. But if you can't wait that long, you could become a member of my Patreon, where I've already uploaded some completed segments from part 2. Until we meet again, I'm Jake, and thank you so much for visiting my Mind Palace. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go start mentally preparing myself for when I have to re-watch Season 5.